Hello, patrons. It's me, it's Queen Auset-Heru, and thank you for joining me for another fabulous edition of The Witch Trials. I am your witch, and I'm putting this movie on trial. As always, I picked another movie for us for this week. Now, the last couple weeks I did men, I did warlocks, two different ones. This time I'm doing a woman again. I thought, I'm gonna tell you, this movie is one of those sappy, sweet, everything wraps up perfectly in a neat little bow by the end kind of movies. Very cute, I would call it a teen movie, really. I love these kind of movies. I am such a sap. I am such a sap. And these kind of movies are so sweet and so cute to me. So I decided to watch this one. This one had been on my list for a while, and I decided to watch it and see, did it have any real witchcraft in it? That was the bottom line. It's all about witches, and I'm like, okay, so is there any real magic going on? Well, this movie is called All Hallows Eve, and it came out in 2016. First, I'm going to give you a summary of the movie, and then I'm going to tell you the virtues and the vices. Now, this is the summary. There's a young girl. She's 18 years old. She just turned 18 at the beginning of the movie. She's waking up and her little sister's telling her happy birthday and, giving her a card and all that kind of stuff. And you find out that her mother has passed away. Her father owns some kind of an antique shop. And she pretty much is helping with her two siblings. She's a little sister and a little brother. And they have a pretty happy family, and all things seem pretty normal. She got this cute little dog. And basically what ends up happening is during the course of the day, and this all took, I think it all happened in the course of one day, now that I think about it. In the course of the day, she finds out that she's a witch. Had no idea. Her mother hid it from her. Her grandmother put a spell, and it was all these spells and stuff you find out. And they hid it because they didn't want her to be persecuted and the power and all this other stuff. So apparently her mother was a witch, her grandmother was a witch. It goes back every generation, there is one witch. So this does happen, by the way, in real life. And not every family, but in a lot of families, that does happen. There's one major witch in each family. And sometimes there are a couple other ones too, but there's one who's like, the head witch. So anyway, everybody is there's only one in her family though, one at a time. So she is the next one in line. Her mother died and she's the next one. So her father gives her this chest and there's all this stuff in it. Come to find out, the dog isn't really a dog. He's her guardian. He's like, he's a little person. He turns into a real person. And her best friend ends up helping her, and all this stuff ensues. And basically what happens is she casts a spell and her evil aunt comes out the mirror. I mean, it was like all of this stuff going on. And by the end of the movie, she had figured out enough about her powers to be able to use them and realized the power of love and family. And now she's taking on her responsibility and goes off to be the witch, She does something where she hides the amulet, so she's not going to be as powerful as some of the other witches before her, but she'll still be able to do basic things. And the little dog goes back to being a dog, basically. So let me tell you what I liked about this movie. I liked the fact that it was a feel-good movie. I like feel-good movies, as I stated earlier. They had amulets, and you guys know I wear amulets all the time. So she had an amulet that was passed down to her. So it was used. It had like all her power in it or something like that. So I thought it was cool that she had an amulet, and it was really cool, and it was pretty well made. She had a Book of Shadows. A Book of Shadows is a real book that we all have, as a matter of fact. I ain't gonna say we all have them, but many of us have it. It's basically a book where you write down your spells. And many of us pass it down. Many of us make up our spells and we pass them down to our daughter, granddaughter, so forth and so on. And she did have her mother, grandmother, great grandmother's book of shadows. Another thing I liked about it was the outfits. Her mom left her these like very traditional looking, Victorian looking dresses. Apparently they were supposed to be family heirlooms, but they were like these, the typical gothic looking dress you would see a witch wear on Halloween. One of those. And the cloaks, that come over their head like Morticia Adams, that kind of thing. They also did some spells in the movie. She didn't use any herbs or a cauldron or anything. She just said them. She just read the spells and they rhymed. So she did a protection spell and a couple other ones. She had a familiar. Remember I said the dog that turned into a person was her familiar. In real life, we do have familiars, but it's usually an animal that doesn't turn into a person. So my familiar was a cat. I don't have a familiar anymore because I move around too much, but typically it was a cat. And familiars are like your like they're like your animal friend. Like they see things. Animals see things and sense things that we can't, or we can, but they sense them first. So if spirits are in the house, for example, your animals probably know before you do, and your familiar usually, if you're in tune with your familiar like I was, you'll be able to read when something's going on, when something's in the house, when danger's approaching. Your familiar is very, helpful in those ways. Most people that have an animal learn that kind of language with their animal, but they learn it for things like when somebody's at the door or the mailman came or something like that. For us, it's the same thing, but we also can tell, oh, there's a spirit here. There's negative energy coming forward. Tomorrow's going to be a rough day. The cat's, acting funny, the cat staring at the ceiling or whatever the case is. And that's how we would know. So many of us do have familiars. Not all of us, but many. They did a mirror spell, and there are a lot of mirror spells, and I mean a lot. I got a book of 5,000 spells, and I think it's several mirror spells in that one. If you Google, Wicca mirror spell, I'm sure several will probably come up. We do use mirror spells. Witchcraft going through the bloodlines. Remember I said this very common for there to be one witch in each generation, or one main one and some other ones too that are kind of into it. They talked about that in the movie, but they just talked about how it was one per generation and the magic goes to the next one when the other one dies. So if her mother had not have died, I don't know about in this case, because it seemed like all the mothers died before they were 18. But in some cases, what had actually happened is that the witch passes the energy on. In real life, it doesn't happen like that. Like usually you wouldn't die. Like, if it was in my generation, it would just be in my generation. And then my kid, she would have it too. And then her kid, one of her kids would have it too. So it would just continue to go, but I wouldn't lose mine when they gained theirs. And this family, it seemed like the one witch had to die for the next one to take power. And I've seen that in American Horror Story and some other stories too. Let me see. Okay, so it goes to the bloodlines and mediumship. We really do mediumship. We can really talk to the dead. Not all of us, but some of us can do it through cards, can do it through mediumship readings, all kinds of different ways. But many witches do talk to spirits. That's very common. Actions have consequences. I loved when she said this. A lot of witch movies gloss over this. Some of the better ones don't though. But a lot of movies gloss over this. Like for instance, Warlock. Warlock didn't talk about the consequences of casting evil magic. But this movie definitely did. It didn't really go into a lot of detail, but one of the characters was like her great aunt, and her great aunt was an evil witch. And they went into detail about the things that she had done and why she did them, and that the things that she did while she was alive had consequences on on her in the afterlife. And the Song of the Siren / Witch. Have you ever heard of a siren? They're usually mermaid looking women, and they basically like chill on rocks and they sing a song, and the sailors will, want to, I guess, see them, have sex with them, something. The sailors want to go meet them, and they'll crash into the rocks and die. This is an old story, I think, from Greek mythology. And she was singing this song, and her song would put people to sleep. And it's very similar to the Song of the Siren. So I thought that was kind of cool because it comes, like I said, from mythology. I don't know anybody, a real witch, that will sing a song and people will fall asleep. But it is something that was discussed in Greek mythology, from the sirens, they were called. And the last virtue is the importance of love, light, and having a good heart. That was actually the overall message of the movie. It was like, no matter what you do, no matter if you're a witch, because the young girl was thinking that she couldn't be a good person, that she would end up evil like her great aunt. And her father is like, nah, just be a good person. Give love, give light, give from your heart, be kind, It doesn't matter who and what you are, you can be a good person. And that was driven home in this movie. And I liked it. That was the feel-good message that really made me like this movie. Now, how many vices are there? Vices, as always, are things that just can't happen. And there were a lot. There were a lot of vices. First, let's add up all of the virtues, okay? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we have 11 virtues. Now I'm going to tell you the vices, and then we're going to count them too. Okay, what could not happen? The dog shape-shifting into a human and back to a dog. I have never seen anything shape-shift. If I saw a dog turn into a human, I would probably faint. Seriously. I have never seen shape-shifting in witchcraft. I've heard of it in legend and folklore and things like that, but I've never experienced it. This is totally fake. Number 2. Magic shooting from their hands. Every cheesy witch movie has magic shooting from their hands. This one I really give a pass because I thought it was so cute. But this is a very common cliche that I've talked about many times on this channel. Shooting magic or shooting fire or shooting some kind of energy from their hands. And your hands do have chakras. You do have energy in your hands. I'm not saying that there's nothing to it. I'm just saying the false way that they do it. They over-exaggerate it so much. Lighting candles with magic. She could walk into the room and just go like this, and all the candles and the lights would come on. And I was like, I wish I could do that. Oh, I wish I could do that. I was so jealous. She created a spell that made candy come out of thin air. And I was like, that's a really cool spell, but nah. Nah. She did this spell and like all the candy came and wouldn't stop coming out, and they were all just eating candy. And I was like, if witches could do that, oh my God. No. It's bad enough we can buy candy. So no candy spells. Then she conjures her relatives. Now remember I told you we can talk to spirits. We can use mediumship. But it's a spiritual thing. They talk to you through the cards. They talk to you through your third eye. They talk to you through bones. They talk to you through different forms of divination. But they generally don't show up in the mirror and start talking to you. Now that can happen to a certain extent. I know people, I've seen spirits in the mirror, but it's not usual for a person to see a spirit in the mirror and stand there and have a conversation like I'm talking to you now. That generally doesn't happen. Usually you see something, it might be a quick flash or something like that. but I've rarely ever seen the way that I've never seen. I'm not even saying rare. I've never seen what she was doing. She did a spell and she conjured her great aunt, and she was just standing there like, "Hey, what's up?" You know, and I was like, "Nah, sis, nah." Truth spell. We do have truth spells, but they don't work the way this one works, man. She did a truth spell on this girl, and the girl just got verbal diarrhea and just started telling all the tea. And truth spells don't really work like that. Truth spells just energetically encourage the person to be open and honest with you. And they usually do start saying and talking and being more open with you, but they don't burst into the room right after you cast a spell and just start, telling you everything you've ever wanted to know about everything. It doesn't usually energetically work like that. Extremely exaggerated. Not only could she talk to people in the mirror, spirits in the mirror, she could put people in the mirror. So she put her little sister in the mirror. And I was like, So she was kind of like trapped in between dimensions in the mirror. And I was just like, Hollywood. Then her aunt was able to do individual mind control, and she was able to do group mind control with her magic. So she was able to make people basically do whatever she wanted them to do. And groups of people just by saying a few words to them. I've never seen anybody do any kind of mind control like that. I mean, I've seen people who are charismatic, who can talk people into things, but I've never seen somebody, make somebody do something that was totally against their will through magical mind control. Maybe through drugs or through an herb or something like that, but not by just standing there talking to them and saying a few words. Remember I told you she turns things on, TVs, lights, everything. She could turn anything on basically with her magic. And I was like, if that was the case, oh my goodness. Nowadays you can turn everything on in your car with the push of a button, That's the closest that witches can get to this ability she's talking about. She could also turn people to stone with magic, like literally turn you to stone. And you would turn, the person didn't lose their color or anything, but they would just stone and they could not move. They could hear and see, but they could not move. And I was like, man, I'm glad witches don't have that ability. I can only imagine what people would do with that. That would not be good. Teleportation, another very common cliche. They could teleport. A lot of times I see this. This is more of a superhero power than it is a witch's power. Shooting fireballs with magic. Here we go again with shooting things out the hands. So they had fireballs and little lights and lasers and all kind of things coming out the hands. And I was like, no. And lastly, the last thing she did was a sleep spell. She did I think she said a few words or something, and the whole audience that was sitting there watching them passed out. Everybody just fell asleep. And I was like, I've done a spell and put people to sleep before. I'm going to be straight up with you. I made a potion, and I had it in this little thing, this bottle just like this, and I had a spray top on it. And I took the potion and I sprayed it in the room. I told the people it was air freshener. And I went on it was like, I went on talking about something or whatever the case was. And I did this on purpose because I wanted to see if the potion would work. And they did all fall asleep. Every single one. Every single one. It was like 10 people in the room and they all fell asleep. And I just stood there like, wow. And then after a while, I was like, okay, I better wake them up. And they woke right up. It wasn't like they were, in eternal sleep or something. But it did work. But I used a potion. So 9 times out of 10, it was the herbs and the combination of the herbs and the water in the air that made them fall asleep. Not just a few words that somebody said. All right, now let's add up these vices. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it's 14 vices. So basically, for witchcraft accuracy, I would have to give this movie a D minus, and that's being generous because I like the movie. A D minus or an F, basically, because there's so much stuff in here that just can't happen. But it was a delightful movie. I love the message about being loved, being light, being kind, loving your family, loving other people, being good to people. I loved the message of this movie. The young girl who was becoming a witch, she learned through the course of that day what was really important: her family. She had been taking her little sister for granted, not really talking to her brother, not really spending time. And she realized, she had withdrawn because her mother died. And she had withdrawn herself from her family and her activities. And through the process of becoming a witch, she realized that she needed to honor those things that were important. So I think that's beautiful. So I like this movie. If I had to grade it just based on that, I would give it an A plus, because that message needs to get out. More people, in my opinion, more people need to treat each other well. I feel like if we treated each other better, we wouldn't have so many people sad and so many people depressed and anxious and on drugs and, drinking all the time and detaching and, getting divorced, or, we would have problems. We can't create a utopia, but I think it would be better if we were just good to each other. At least the things that we go through, if we were good to each other, I think it would alleviate a lot of that energy. So for that aspect, I give it an A plus. But for witchcraft accuracy, it's not Queen Auset-Heru approved. But if you want a good feel-good movie to watch with your family, this would be a good one. It's very innocent, it's very sweet, and young people can watch it. Like, I think I don't know what the age, the age, suggested age was on it. I don't remember, but I think it said tween, if I'm not mistaken. And tween is like, before they hit teen. So we're talking like 10, 11, 12. So younger people can watch it. I think younger people than that could watch it too. They just might not understand everything that's going on. So you might have to explain it to them. But if you have young children or nieces and nephews or anybody in your life that you want to get this message across to, this would be a pretty decent way of at least trying. Okay? All right, guys. Come back next week because I have another movie in mind. This one is actually an animation that I have in mind. It's an animation about some magical creatures, and a couple of them are witches. So please come back soon because I have a lot more to say. See you later.